it's an honor to be here today, and I'm sure you have a lot of questions about different things, but I'll take some time to just provide a little bit of an overview of the system, where it's been and where we want it to go, and then Alan will talk in a little bit more fine detail about some of the efforts that we're working on in partnership with the Urban District here in Silver Spring, and then some very commonly asked questions about what is or is not recyclable. So I'm sure all of you are like, well, what about this thing or what about that thing? So we'll talk about that. Montgomery County is really blessed to have to be able to enjoy, what we call a resource recovery system that's actually really progressive. And it was designed in the mid-'80s. And that includes the transfer station, it includes the recycling center, it includes the waste to energy facility, and it's connected by rail. It's actually a pretty fully integrated system that the taxpayers own. That's very unusual in the United States. It's an industry that's very much dominated by generally a handful of small companies that try to make profit on it. But here in Montgomery County, the emphasis has always been on sustainability and responsible management of the quote-unquote waste stream. So what we're going to talk about tonight is a little bit of a description of that system, sort of where the industry is going, what we're looking to do here in the county as being responsive to international trends and also domestic markets and best practices. So raise your hand if you've taken a tour of the recycling facility. All right, so most people have. And if you haven't, you're ostracized.
I was like, oh, I have to post pictures.
I visited the incinerator that they don't want us to call the incinerator.
Yes, the waste to energy incinerator is what I call it. Because some people don't like waste to energy terms, some people don't like incinerator term, but it's both of those things.
Right.
But yeah, overall, it's a remarkable system and a series of assets that we have. So I'm going to focus mostly on recycling. Incidentally, when I came to the department a year ago, we did an assessment of the department and did a reorganization and also a rebranding of different programs and units that we have. So Alan now works for the Recycling and Resource Management Division, formerly known as the Solid Waste Division. And we didn't like the term waste because what we find is that so much material in the waste stream has value. So we want to do everything that we can, and we have a responsibility to the public and to the planet and to future generations to recover as much of that material as valuable. So we're beginning to reorient ourselves in that way. But before I talk about what we want to do in the future, I just want to really emphasize the tremendous assets that we have. So we have the recycling center that the county owns. We contract out the operation, but we're on site there every single day supervising. Also at the transfer station site, at that site near Shady Grove, is a series of citizen drop-off areas. So books, textiles, electronics, hazardous waste, paint. If you want to pick up paint, you can actually pick up used paint there as well. That's a remarkable resource. So that's like genuine resource recovery taking place. And across the country, people are talking about, oh, we should build resource recovery parks. We should have these drop-offs that are available to the public. Well, Montgomery County has been doing this for decades. So that's a lot to be proud of. Here in the county, our overall diversion rate, or simplified terms, recycling rate, is roughly 60%, which is very narrowly number one in the state of Maryland, but it's pretty high. And we generally have pretty good participation from residents and businesses, but of course it could be much better. A lot of the material that goes to the waste to energy incinerator, though, is recyclable. So still, people are not doing it right everywhere all the time. That goes for businesses, multifamily, and single-family homes. So we have a lot more work to do. But some of the things that we're finding, and let me defer to you two. So what did you see at the recycling center? And I'll use that as sort of a jumping off point and I want to limit you to just a couple minutes because I know you're kind of exuberant.
Well, when the stuff comes in the initial, you call it the pre-sort, where it's first looked at. And it is, as you realize, it's an incredibly manually intensive process. there was a tremendous amount of stuff being pulled out right there at the top. A lot of plastic bags, a lot of paper, and then they were sorting a few large stuff, and large bottles were coming out, laundry tubs type things like that. And then there was things coming in that was just like, I thought to myself, what's gonna happen when this gets up there? And it was like a string of Christmas tree lights. It was like strung out to the conveyor. And I thought, oh. So yeah, I was struck by it, the noise level and how manually intensive it was. And I was also struck by the fact that it did not smell at all. Now, maybe that was because it was winter, but didn't smell at all.
The number of plastic bags and the plastic wrapping, like the big rolls of toilet paper wrapping or the paper towels, there was an
Or wrappers
amount
from
of that.
water bottles, things like that.
Right.
Great. So I didn't cue them in advance, but they perfectly sort of queued up what we're looking at doing. So we have a great system here, but the system that we have today and what you saw there is almost identical to the system that was designed in the 1980s. And that's a little bit of a dig because technology has advanced, but that's pretty representative of what's happening in the United States as a whole. So in the country, and I think Alan, you'd agree with this, is we have not really upped our game that much on recycling. Recycling rates are higher, of course, than they were in the 90s when we were just getting on board, but really we aren't seeing the amount of complete buy-in for recycling that we really expect in the year 2020. So the Elrich administration, we're completely committed to trying to figure this out and get to the next level. So our rates, in this region, and I include Prince George's and Howard County, we're in the very top tier of progressive recycling counties in the country. So we compare favorably to San Francisco and Portland and all those places. But still, what you saw that afternoon is clear that we are not doing enough, and we aren't doing it right, because there's still a lot of what we call contamination. This is stuff that goes into the system that can't be recycled, that the machinery has to pull out or individuals have to pull out, and that contaminates the stream. So we get that stuff and then we end up sending it to the incinerator anyway, or it gets mixed into the commodities, I'm going to talk about in terms of commodities, get mixed in with plastic and other stuff. And then when we go to sell those commodities, we don't get as much as we should. So just kind of nuts and bolts from an economic standpoint, when we make about $45 a ton, we break even. So just to give you an idea of each of the commodities. So paper, when it's sorted right, we get between $20 and $40 or $50 a ton. So not too bad. Plastics, when they're mixed together, we get around $25 a ton. So we're losing money. Glass, we're at about $1 or less a ton. So we lose a lot of money on glass. We make it up on aluminum, where we get about $1,500 a ton. So just to give you an idea. So what we find is that we have got to be in the business of getting as much value as possible by having as pure a commodity stream as we can. So what this will require is sort of an update of the entire infrastructure of doing it from soup to nuts. So the way that we're looking at it in the Elrich administration is really going at it at every single point in the commodity stream. And we're still working on plans. We're close to releasing a report on getting to zero waste in the county. So not everything is out of the oven yet for discussion, but I'm going to give you an idea of what we're looking at. So from the very beginning, what we're finding, and you saw it there, people are pulling out all this garbage, literally garbage out of the recycling stream, and we're losing money cleaning it up. So that is a dollar and a time burden that the public is picking up because of irresponsibility on the manufacturing side. So the manufacturers have not been held accountable to provide materials that are easily recyclable or that have value in recycling. So one of the things that we're talking about, we're going to actually be introducing legislation soon, is to ban number 6 plastics. So you recall a few years ago, we banned styrofoam in Montgomery and also in DC. And in Prince George's, because it's not recyclable, it ends up costing a lot of money. So that's great, and that's been a positive benefit. Number 6 plastics look like they're recyclable. They smell like they recycle. They quack like they're recyclable, but they're not. So that ends up getting mixed into with all the other plastics, and then it drags the value of that ton of plastics down. So, by banning those number 6 plastics, we're going to do a little bit to make the commodity stream, a little bit more valuable. So that's important. Also, what we find is that a lot of plastics, a lot of products have mixed plastics in them. So they might have a number 1 plastic with a number 5 plastic, and you're like, what is this number 1, number 5, number 6? That refers to the type of resin that goes into the plastic. And then the recycling stream on the back end, they can pelletize and they can take these plastics, and if they're pure, then they can more easily convert them into other materials. So that's another thing, is the mixed plastics. So we want to focus on the manufacturers and make them more responsible for putting stuff into the stream that is easily recyclable and that easily has value. And also, if they're a material that is not recyclable at all, we want to look at not letting it exist in the waste stream whatsoever. And then we have the consumer side. So all of us that are buying stuff, using stuff, and then putting stuff in the in the bins after every meal or after we open the mail or whatever we do. So we have got to do a lot more to educate. We've begun in the last year, and we have some ideas based on records coming from the trash haulers and from our field inspectors that are out there in the community to see what communities are participating not as robustly as they should in recycling. So we have a pilot where we're targeting an area to do education, to actually look into the bins, and not just the recycling bin to make sure they're recycling right, but to look in the trash bin as well. So we want to make sure that people are not putting recycling in the trash bin and to educate them. Some of the things that we're considering is to have the same type of diligence that we have on the recycling on the trash side. So I'll explain what that means. So the trash haulers, are, by contract, if they open up the lid and they see food or, garbage in there, that they leave it at the curb. We don't have that same standard for the converse on trash. So if they open up the trash and they see plastic bottles or aluminum cans, our position is that, that's a valuable commodity. We should leave that at the curb as well until people learn that they need to separate their recycling. So that's critical. Also, there is a mandatory recycling law in the county where all businesses, multifamily, public facilities have to provide recycling alongside trash. So we had that here. But there's so many businesses that we aren't enforcing as robustly as we should. So we're looking at technologies, participation from the public to report more. If they're apartment building or condo or workplace is not recycling, to hold them more accountable, because about 50% of the waste stream does come from commercial businesses. So we really need their investment. And there's fewer commercial businesses, of course, than there are residents. So it's a little bit more easier to manage. So we really want to focus on the consumer piece and what people are doing before they put material out on the curb. And then finally, we have to look at our infrastructure as well. And you saw, all the workers there, and we have, roughly 60 plus people working in that facility, every day. They work super hard, and they're pulling stuff out, but still they miss stuff. Just the amount is overwhelming. And also, we cannot handle in that facility the amount of material that we're getting in the county. So remember, it was designed in the 1980s. Montgomery County was a much less populated county back then, and now 40% of the recycling that we generate in the county is diverted to another recycling center because we cannot handle it here. So that's a lot. Not only is a lot in volume, but we also lose the opportunity to sell that material because that's going someplace else. So we're not, we're not making money off of it. So we're looking at building a new recycling facility that's bigger, that can handle it. We're also exploring partnering with other jurisdictions as well. So we're not the only ones with this issue, but we're really lucky that we own the assets here. Washington, D.C., for example, does not own their own. Howard County and Frederick counties do not own. So, we're not making money on recycling right now. It's the right thing to do, but we're not making money. But those counties in this the city of Washington are losing tons of money. They're not recovering any because they're going to private contractors who are focused more on their bottom line than on providing value for the public. So we're looking at working with them. And we think with those economies of scale, we're able to get even more commodities and can get more value out of the waste stream. Also, it's very manual, and the workers there are amazing. But we benefit from living in a time now with where technology is so advanced, and we can take advantage of robotics and optical sorters. So it's available online if you want to check it out. But it's actually pretty cool, and I got a demonstration a few months ago at a conference. But that there's now computer equipment that you can set on the conveyor belt, and it will actually read and be able to identify what the material is, even different types of plastics, and then pick it up and then put it in a bin separately with about a 98 or 99% accuracy rate. So with that amount of precision, if we're able to sort our plastics by type, instead of getting, I mentioned about $25 a ton, we can get about $250 to $400 a ton, depending on the type of resin that we have. So that's something that we're looking at very seriously as well, because we want to make money on recycling. We want to save the planet, so that's the most important thing. So we're recycling no matter what, but we want to make sure that we're getting as much value as possible. And then I've been talking for a little while, and then I'm going to hand it off to Alan. I'm happy to answer any questions. But there's also other parts of the waste stream that have value that we're really not recovering as well as we should. And I'll just mention them briefly that we're also focused on. The biggest one is organic food scraps. Well, food scraps, period, and other organics. So between 20 and 25% of what's going to the incinerator today is actually organic material that could be composted and sold. So you're probably familiar, or you've heard of a product called leaf throw that's made here in Montgomery County. It's made from your leaves and Christmas trees and other stuff that people set out at the curb. So we process that material up in Dickerson, we bag it, and then we sell it as a soil amendment compost product. And we make pretty good money on that. We can do the same thing with food. So we can take food, we can mix it into the existing leaf grow product and make a more premium compost product that has more nutrients in it, and we can sell more. So the County of Prince George's, our neighbor to the east, does that, and they make a premium on selling that material. And of course, they keep it out of their landfill, so they're not creating greenhouse gases that way. That's something that we need to do here in Montgomery County as well. And then there's other items in the waste stream, like textiles. A lot of folks will take stuff to Value Village or Purple Heart or Salvation Army, and that's great. But still, a lot of stuff going into the waste stream are textiles. And even if they have stains on them, there's still manufacturers that will take that and shred it and use it for insulation or other types of manufacturing products. So we've been talking to different companies that do that to be able to collect more of that at the curb in a special type of bag. So stay tuned for that. And then we're also looking at bigger bulk items that still have value, like old tables, chairs, couches, toasters, stuff that people put at the curb could still work. Right now, basically gets crushed and goes to the incinerator. But we've been talking to local nonprofits on some type of way that we can partner with them, that they could buy or have that stuff for free, fix it up, and then give it to the homeless or people in transition, or some type of warehouse or retail opportunity. So even if the county isn't making money, we're preventing loss by having to take that stuff, ship it to the incinerator, and have it dealt with there. So we're trying to find those innovative partnerships to be able to recapture more and more tonnage, especially the stuff that has value. So stay tuned. There's going to be a lot coming. Our report should be out in February. You'll be able to see it online, and it doesn't give hardcore recommendations, but rather provides dozens of different types of programs that we'd be encouraged to look into and support, and then we'll be rolling the ones that have the most merit out in the months and years to come. So I'm going to pause there. Well, maybe why don't we take maybe a couple of questions, burning questions on that, and then I'll have Alan talk about some of the more particular stuff. Is there anything sort of immediately that people have questions on?
I do have a question. I was wondering if you found anything yet in the research you're doing as to what are the barriers and the differences you're finding in different communities? Is it income? Is it, what is it leading to different recycling rates around the country, county?
No, that's a good question. We haven't,
Is it
I think
age?
anecdotally we have some, but I don't know if we have enough sample and enough research done to identify exactly what it is. Anecdotally, Alan, you can agree or disagree. There's language, multifamily seems to be really difficult, and not necessarily income, but I don't know if we have enough data to know.
No, I think one of the biggest issues is ease of access. So on the single family sector, the county provides a bin, the cart for the mixed paper, a bin for the bottles, cans, and containers, and then the weekly collection service. Specifically on multifamily, the county does not provide recycling and refuse collection service. So in those communities, the property management company, contracts with the private collector for that have to occur. Also on multifamily, they have less space to store the materials, and they have to, if it's a garden style, they're gonna have to walk to a central collection area to put their materials. So unless they're super motivated, it might be easier for them to mix it all in one bag and just put it in the trunk of the car when they're leaving in the morning, stop at the dumpster or the compactor, throw it into one container, instead of putting the trash in the compactor, the recycling mixed paper in the cart, or in the dumpster, depending how their setup is. So I think ease of access, at least in the multifamily, but also, as Edmund mentioned, language issues. So we have folks coming from all around the world coming to Montgomery County. And if they don't know what our program is, they're bringing what they know, what they're familiar with. And it might be different from how we recycle here in Montgomery County. So unless they have clear information about what they can recycle and how they can recycle, they're going to possibly put it in the wrong bin. And then whoever's coming behind them will see there's contamination. Then they get frustrated and say, I'm not going to bother anymore. I'm just going to throw it in the trash. So I think education is one of the major issues, at least on the multifamily and ease of access that we see quite often.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. Question. Anything else for me?
Is there any variation in the overall recycling rate between residential and commercial, or is it mostly the same?
Yeah, so our single-family residential recycling rate is about 63%. Our commercial recycling rate is about 55.9%, 56%. And our multifamily sector is at 29%. So.
And do you stack this against actual amounts? The percentage of the volume, I guess, is what I mean.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, off the top of my head, I can't remember the exact tonnage, but the overall tons recycled was about 616,000 tons of all materials recycled out of about 1.1 million tons waste generated. So that's 616,000 tons, 63% is from the single family.
So basically, we have to work on both sides, is what you're saying.
Yeah, there's still, like Adam mentioned, a lot of opportunities still ending up in the waste that's going to the facilities and not being recycled when it should be recycled.
Thanks, Jonathan. All right, so Alan, why don't you talk a little bit about some local stuff happening here, where we're partnering with Rialberto and Urban District, and some of the commonly asked questions.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. So Adam had mentioned recycling is mandatory here in Montgomery County. It's a law for single-family residents, multifamily properties, as well as businesses. Not just businesses, but also nonprofit organizations, but local, state, and federal government agencies, including Montgomery County. So we need to make sure that if we're enforcing recycling regulations on the business sector, that we're doing our own thing correctly as well, that we're following the law. One of the things that we see, especially in public spaces, is the lack of recycling containers. So that way, if you're going shopping and you have your container that you're done drinking out of, if you're walking in the public space in the urban districts, for example, where are you going to put that plastic bottle or that aluminum can? If there's not a recycling bin in close convenient proximity to you, you're most likely, if you're not really into recycling as that much, going to go to the nearest container, and most likely that's going to be a trash container. So our division, last fall, we actually did a survey in all the urban districts, Bethesda, Silver Spring, and Wheaton, and we looked at all the trash containers, as well as all the recycling bins set out, that are currently set out there. And we wanted to see where recycling containers were collated next to trash containers. And what we found is there were some, but not to where it needs to be. In some places, very low. So we're working with the urban districts to identify the exact number of recycling bins that are needed to make sure they're in compliance with the requirements, where there's a trash can, there must be a recycling bin, but also checking on the placement. The bins that are currently out now for recycling, they are placed in strategic locations near high volume areas, high traffic areas where they expect to see a lot of pedestrian traffic, a lot of foot traffic, and where there's restaurants and folks are taking containers outside to consume. So there are recycling bins there, but that's a small percentage of what we're finding. So we're working closely with the urban districts to identify these other recycling bins that need to be installed. And we're going to be working with them over the next year to get those bins ordered, get them installed. The urban district staff will go ahead and, just like they do now, service those containers. They bring all the recycling to the recycling center for processing. But we just have to make sure that the public, whether there be residents or visitors to the urban districts, have the ability to be able to recycle. So it's an exciting project that we're undertaking. And there's a lot of enthusiasm, there's a lot of interest, and hopefully in a very short time, we're gonna see more and more recycling bins in the downtown Silver Spring area, as well as throughout the urban district, because not just public spaces, but even at the bus stops and bus shelters. Because folks are gonna be sitting there, they're gonna finish their water bottle or their paper coffee cup, and they're gonna want a place to put that container when it's empty and not carry it on the bus or take it on to the metro. So we're gonna be working to make sure that there's recycling for everyone, that there's no question about, well, there's no bin near me, so I'm just gonna put it in the trash. So we're gonna try to eliminate that completely from happening. So any questions on that exciting project? So you'll see more bins out there. One of the other things we're constantly asking when we do a presentation is what is recyclable? And I'm glad you went to the recycling center, and because you see the mounds of materials come in, you get a greater appreciation for what we're seeing. And yes, we are seeing a lot of contamination. So one of the, as Adam had mentioned, providing an additional level of education to residents to make sure that they're not putting in those plastic bags or the plastic film. Yeah, they're recycled, not in our curbside program. You can take it back to most grocery stores. They have a phenomenal recycling program where they send it to Trex and they recycle it into the alternative lumber products. And we're pretty close to Virginia where their facility is located. So it makes great sense. It's a nice clean product. But once it gets to our side of the stream, it picks up broken pieces of glass, beverages, gets sticky. It's more of a challenge for them to process. So there's an infrastructure in place for residents to be able to recycle. So we want to make sure that for the time being that they know about those programs and can participate in those programs. And so it's making sure that residents know and businesses know that what is recyclable here in Montgomery County is actually recyclable. And before everyone leaves, I do have a little handout I'll leave with everyone. People will see the recycling symbol, so when they see that symbol, they think that's recyclable. And just because that symbol, I hear all the time, well, I saw the symbol on it, therefore I can go in the bin. But styrofoam has a symbol on it. It's a number 6 plastics. It has a little recycle symbol, but we don't have markets to recycle that styrofoam. So here in Montgomery County, styrofoam is not recyclable, even though it has that little recycling symbol on it. And we've really done a great job educating folks about the recycling symbol, but now with the variety, especially plastics out there, they want to be able to recycle everything that's plastic out there, and it's not all recyclable. So we're going back to that education, going back to the recycling basics, and telling people to recycle more, but recycle right. Put the materials that we can recycle into the bin. And so remind them what we mean by those different types of plastics, numbers 1 through 7, no number 6s, nothing that contain an automotive or hazardous product in the curbside bins. There are other ways to process those materials, but it's not in the curbside bin. So are there any questions about the types of plastics, or those burning questions about, I always want to know what to recycle, that I just didn't know who to ask or?
We talked about this. I mean, I think one of the things that's so confusing is that everything has changed so quickly, right? Like, so from one Christmas season to the next, just the packaging that Amazon or whoever is using completely changes. So first you're getting like the pops, and then you're getting the plastic puffy air things, and we just never know what to do with them.
Yeah,
Like,
well,
are those just like plastic
Those,
bags?
I slice them up so they deflate, and then they go to the grocery store.
Like as if it's a plastic
That's like a
bag.
plastic bag, yep.
So
All
that's,
that stuff goes to the
I think
grocery
that's what's hard, is keeping up with the change, so that people know what to do with the stuff as it changes.
Exactly, yeah.
I appreciate, Ellen, how responsive you've been over the years. I really appreciate that.
No, thank you.
Yeah, Alan is great. The team is so great. And, but that Amazon is a great case in point. Because for a while they had boxes with like paper bag paper in it.
Yeah.
Yes, right.
That was
Yeah, craft paper is
recycled.
great.
Yeah.
Craft
If
paper.
they use crumpled craft, that'd be one.
I know, but that's like circa 2007.
Yeah.
Amazon, and there
You
was.
still see it once in a while, but not very
Yeah,
often.
occasionally, and then they had a different package with shredded material and inside for the cushioning, and now they have those envelopes that have the mixed material.
Mhm.
So it has the bubble wrap with the paper on top, and that is not
You
recyclable.
actually separate them.
Yeah, bless your heart, bless your heart. But that's an example of a manufacturer putting a burden on you
Right.
to do the right thing when they
I'd rather
should
they
be
did
doing
the
it.
all plastic one because then I can just send that to the grocery store.
Right,
Well, because we haven't accurately priced the cost of it. That's the big problem.
right, exactly. So one of the things, and I don't think I'm talking out of school, is the county executive and us are very interested in finding ways to have real extended producer responsibility, or EPR, where these manufacturers are more invested in helping us bear the true cost of disposal of these items. And that's not just stuff in the recycling stream that may not be recyclable, but also what's called the fugitive stuff, also known as litter.
Mhm.
Between DC and Prince George's and Montgomery, we spend about $40 million a year just picking litter. And, you're paying for it. You didn't do it, but you're paying for it. Where did it come from? It came from, these folks. And so, we need to have these manufacturers bear more responsibility because the true costs are unloaded onto the public sector. Other questions, comments, thoughts, advice?
One thing I've been wondering about. So when China stopped taking a bunch of stuff, there were news articles that recycling was going off the rocks. And I had the impression that it didn't hit us in Montgomery County in the same way. And what can you enlighten us about that?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. So, I love this issue because it illustrates so much that's right and wrong about our system. So there are reports, and I read them every week about this town, the city, isn't doing this, isn't doing that anymore, or it's not worth it. I read those articles a lot. So it triggers a few different things. One is Montgomery County. To answer your first question, primary question, Montgomery County, we recycle everything that can be recycled. And we send it to domestic markets. So we're sending glass to Pennsylvania, we're sending plastics from Ohio to Pennsylvania to West Virginia, paper, roughly mid-Atlantic and Midwestern states that are by. So everything is getting recycled domestically here. And we work really hard to do that. We have, really good commodities buyer. And the numbers aren't great, but they aren't terrible. And that goes to the credit that our forebears have for having Montgomery own its own assets. A lot of those other jurisdictions are using private companies, and the private companies aren't able to make the return to shareholders as much on recycling because the margins aren't there anymore. So they're charging exorbitant prices, and these places are just like, hey, we can't be spending $120 a ton, to get rid of plastics, which is what it ends up being. So they end up not doing it. So it goes into sort of the privatization of some places, the waste stream and the demand to return shareholder value that drives the costs up and makes those jurisdictions decide not to do it. So that's one piece. So it's great that it's a public asset here, and it should be in more places. The other issue goes back to the comments I had earlier on. People are angry at China for not taking our garbage, but they did a rational thing. We're sending them garbage, and we're calling it recycling. We have not upped our game as a country to make sure that we're recycling right and that we're putting the right materials in. And we were, off putting that burden onto China. So, this goes back to the manufacturers making stuff that's recyclable and easy to sort, and that makes all of us, more responsible for making sure that we're recycling properly. So, there's some good things coming out of this. I think it's forcing places like us to really get serious about investing in, modern infrastructure, on updating our laws and policies so we're doing stuff right. So, and also moving all the manufacturers more accountable. I'm sure you have thoughts as well.
No, I think you pretty much hit everything on the head. I mean, it's a very global, but as Adam said, we thought about those things ahead of time by having our own facilities that really saved us a lot. But we go to regional meetings all the time, and a lot of the other jurisdictions in Virginia, Northern Virginia, they're struggling with their programs, and they're having this, change the programs massively to address those because they're sending them to through private facilities, and they don't have that ability to control what they're able to do. So their residents are having much difficult time being able to recycle easily at their homes or at their businesses because of the changes that they're seeing. So it has made a big difference here.
Was there also something about the single stream versus the separation that we do that factored into that?
So I mean, in terms of our single, Montgomery County, our facility, as you saw when you were out there, is a dual stream program, which means the paper goes into one container, the bottles, cans, and jars go into another container, but then the trucks that we provide, our collection services, are split body trucks. So we maintain that separation from the time where you generate it at the curb to us collecting the material and then us taking it to our facility. And then the paper's going in one building and the bottles, cans, jars go in another.
Dump the wine half over in the fiber building.
Right. So once you start mixing materials together, there's an increased level of contamination because paper was not designed to repel liquids and broken pieces of glass and things like that. So you're going to have some more contamination of the product. But then it takes additional level of sorting that material out. So just through the process, the way the materials are handled through the process, you get a little bit less quality out at the end product. And so the value is not as high as if you have a dual stream.
I would think the dual stream seems like it makes a lot of sense. Just for all, a lot of what you just said, especially the contamination piece, because those change the value.
Well, the clean paper is
Much more valuable.
Much more valuable.
Yeah.
No question.
Not as good as aluminum, but still.
Yeah, not as good as aluminum. So I
Aluminum
want
is-
everybody, don't buy beer in glass bottles anymore, aluminum cans. I want a pledge. It's the only way you should buy beverages.
And when you recycle just one aluminum can, you save enough energy to power a TV set for 3 hours. So you can save a lot of energy during recycling just one aluminum can. So that's a fun little fact I should share.
So our local craft breweries in Silver Spring are doing it right.
Yep, they
Yeah,
are.
they are.
Yeah,
They
they're doing
absolutely
it's all
are.
canned. Yeah.
Yeah, no question. There's another good thing that's coming out of the sort of meltdown with China and recycling is that domestic manufacturers are stepping up to take the material and be able to process it. So there's, I think this number is right, 16 domestic pulp mills that are being either built or re-engineered to take recycled fiber. So some of them are were formerly virgin pulp mills, so harvested lumber and then they process it and turn it into paper. Some of those are being retrofitted and changed to be able to take the recycled content because it's not going to China anymore.
Are they gonna smell better than the virgin pulp?
The jury's still out on
Oh,
that.
because a pulp mill was like the worst thing in the world.
True. But at least they're taking, well, I imagine, it won't smell bad here in Montgomery County. I promise that, because they're hundreds of miles away. But that's a good, that means that American manufacturing is stepping up, into the recycling game more. So that's a positive outcome as well.
In Montgomery Hills, where I'm from, there are a lot of small businesses that are some newer immigrants, but also I think they have some challenges to recycling compared to bigger businesses. Is there something that we can do that can help them be successful in recycling?
Well, one of the things that we like to do is provide as much assistance as possible. And so we can help them provide education, training, technical assistance. I mean, we will do the complete training for them. Once they have a contract in place for that collection service, we will pretty much do everything else except for putting materials in the bins for them. Right? So that way they don't have to spend staff and resources to develop those materials. We can help them with that. So that can save them money on that side. We also work with some small scale businesses that are co-located next to one another, where instead of having individual contracts for collection service, they did like a cooperative collection project. We actually have one of those areas in Silver Spring where we have similar type of businesses sharing one set of collection containers. So you have 5 businesses sharing one, so you don't have multiple sets of containers. They're all feeding in and they're splitting the cost of that service. So instead of them paying for a full 8-yard
make more
dumpster, for
sense.
example, they got it divided by 5. So
Right.
we found some really good successes with that. One of the challenges that we find is space to put those containers. So as the development continues to go on, there's less physical space on the exterior of those properties to set these common collection containers. They don't have room inside their business. They can't be putting it inside. They have to put it somewhere outside. So it's finding that balance to where they have that space available, but working with businesses that might not necessarily agree with one another, trying to get them to work together to have one common contract. And where we did those projects, we did find success. We saw the recycling rates increase in those areas, and their overall costs came down in terms of both their solid waste services. So that was an exciting project, and we're always looking for those opportunities.
And when you're going to move to food recycling, will you start with the businesses first or with residential? With the businesses, right?
Yeah, thank you. So we're starting now. This year, we're on track to divert 4,000 tons of food. So we're really excited about that. We're talking to supermarkets and food distributors to try to get those big amounts first. But we also have partners doing curbside, particularly in Tacoma Park and Chevy Chase, a handful of other places. So, but yeah, the commercial sector is like, we got to get that right. No question.
At one time, the county was supplying compost bins. Do you guys still do that?
We do. We have the backyard compost bins, but they're designed for the grass and leaves, the
Yeah.
garden trimmings, because
Big
they're completely
square
open. Yep, they're about cubic yard in size of the
Yeah.
mesh ones.
Yeah.
They're available at 21 locations, and actually here in Silver Spring, the closest one is at Whole Foods. They're one of our distribution points that residents can get them. So we actually have 21 locations. We have that posted on our website. I happen to bring a flyer with me too for the compost bins. So as we get ready for the spring coming up, it'll be here before you know it. You can start thinking about composting the yard trim. Yeah.
Hey, good plug. We didn't even ask you to do that. Just do
Well,
that
and to
right
that
now.
point, does it tell people who are like, I don't know how to do this? Like, is it very easy to say this is what you need to do?
For composting, it is.
Because I feel like I know a lot of people who are like super busy, but if it was easy, they would totally do it.
Yeah, whenever we do workshops, we do presentations, and we train our recycling volunteers also to go out there to talk to residents and do various demonstrations. There are 2 ways to compost. There's the easy way and the hard way. I like the easy way,
Yeah.
Those people.
but when you do it the easy way, you're not going to get compost out in
Yeah.
a certain amount of time. So if somebody wants to get compost out, say 9 or 10 months, they got to really pay really close attention to it. But you can be a cool composter, put your yard trim materials in there, and just let nature take its time. It'll break down, it won't smell, as long as you put the correct materials in there. If you want the materials broken down faster, you want to have the proper moisture content, you want to turn the materials once or twice a month, get the
There's a couple
oxygen
of
in there.
things
So there's a
we
couple
found
more.
over the years. One of the things is like the lid, for example. I never leave the lid on in the summer. Leave the lid off all summer because you get more water in there.
Oh, right.
and
Yeah.
it breaks down faster. Kitchen scraps, things like banana peels, cut them up into small pieces before they go into the compost.
Okay.
And we found that over the years, our compost pile pretty much turned from a compost pile into a worm farm.
No way.
And stuff goes, it pretty much disappears in a couple of weeks. So it works really well.
What kind of container do you use?
It's one of those big,
What are these?
one of the county ones. Yeah, it's like,
Okay. Cool.
it's about 2 foot square and maybe 2.5 feet high.
Right.
Yeah.
Like we officially advise people not to put food in, but a lot of people do. A lot of renegades.
There, I'm so there.
But
Because
it's
I-
all good. It's
You
all
know,
good.
no food goes in my trash.
Yeah, one of the issues I think is, I live in a neighborhood where, our kitchen compost, thing outside, I pretty much have access to leaves the whole year round. So that makes it very easy for me to do the rough balancing.
Right.
And our aim was really to just stop throwing stuff away. So anything that we can take out of the bottom is kind of gravy. And it's amazing how much volume goes into that. Just
Yeah.
Right.
boggling.
The other fun thing is we pull dirt out of the thing at the bottom, to
Right.
put in the pots in the spring. And it's always really interesting to see what things grow out of those pots. Because
Oh, right.
we had this massive squash vine grow out of one this year, which produced, I don't know, 6 butterkins.
Well, I need to give you a thermometer so that we can measure the pile temperature, and that we get to about 140 degrees to kill all the seeds. That we don't have stuff going out
Yeah,
there.
that's not the point. I mean, the point is to me is I want to make dirt.
Yeah, that's cool.
Don't care about killing the seeds.
Well, we get complaints all the
Get
time.
volunteer
Well, we got
tomatoes all
watermelons
over the
growing
place.
out there.
They're happy problems to have.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, well, most people, if you're composting, you don't have to put your trash out with any urgency because it's not smelling as much necessarily. The volumes are less. And in my case, I put my trash out once every 6 weeks, maybe. But I have backyard composting and I recycle like a maniac.
The other
And I don't have a baby,
really
so it's very
positive thing about it, at least what it did for us, is that because we were throwing away so much less because of this, we paid much more attention to what we were putting in the trash, much more attention.
You touched on this a little bit, but for the like big items that could be passed on, you want to divert like the old couches and things like that from the waste stream. What do you see as the role, like my local neighborhood, I live in East Silver Spring, has a really robust like Buy Nothing group, and there's a Silver Spring Time Bank that does reuse and repair clinics, and it's like a hyper-local circular economy kind of thing. What do you see as the role of the county in helping residents find those kinds of opportunities? Like, could there be a clearinghouse on your website or something? It's like, these are like free cycle, but more.
People just like crumble or some list.
To try to scale these things up.
Yeah, because
Pockets in places.
Because I think people in my neighborhood who want to be aggressive recyclers are looking for these things, but they're probably looking at the county's website to find the opportunities. And I know it's a small slice of, it's not your focus because it's a small slice of the pie, but is there a role for the county in helping to promote?
And before you even answer that, can I add to that, because it's sort of related to my question, which is around the marketing communications of all of this, because it's like, how do you get it out in front of the average person who's not following your website? And like, part of that is on us and all the different channels that we have access to. But I too am part of a very, very aggressive hyper local Buy Nothing group, and it's been amazing. But I just think like the amount of people that don't know about it until they know about it is huge. And the same thing goes with like, I'm sure the composting boxes that are available, people won't know about it.
Yeah, so I'll answer it in a few different ways, and then Alan, feel free to chime in. So we have lots of resources, and so if there's, whether it's composting or different free cycle or thrift opportunities, and we can provide that information, let us know. If there's something you're looking for that'd be helpful in the neighborhood, ask us and we'll try to generate the content so you have it. Because the challenge that you have is probably a similar challenge or need that any other neighborhood is having. So please draw on us. One is like, we have this stuff, and we'll do our best to try to reach the 1 million people that live in Montgomery County, but they're gonna listen and read their listserv message, and have an impact on them much more than, our website and the passive, the content that's there. So we need you to help keep sort of connecting and validating and educating people. And that goes for, any business that's, tuning in tonight, or any community association or any church. Like, you all are really the people that are gonna make this happen or not, they're gonna help, validate and communicate that. So please do that. The other thing is that we're improving our ability to communicate in the department. So we've established, I mentioned earlier, there's reorganization in the department. So we have established for the first time a communications unit. So we have better social media, very consistent, good content, easy to read, more videos, because people are getting a lot more information from watching videos through social media. So we have a lot about recycling, and Alan actually was the screenwriter for some of the. I was the actor. I was the star. But anyway, some pretty good content there that's been getting a lot of hits and a lot of shares. So please use that. But we know that that's still not enough. We're not getting enough to the people who aren't doing it yet. We're still kind of talking to what I call the NPR crowd. Which is great. We need the NPR crowd. But as we build this team out, we're going to be doing more focused social media buys on groups that aren't really tuning in Like we want to get content proactively in front of them, in front of these low-performing recycling neighborhoods, speakers of other languages to help them acculturate to how we do things here, and multifamily communities. So we're going to try to be more strategic using technology as well. But that's my quick response. I'm sure there's things we're not thinking of. You're at the ground level, so if you have ideas or feedback or something we should be doing, please don't hesitate. Is there anything you did?
No, I think you covered everything well. I mean, historically, it was always advertised in the paper, and that just has completely gone away. So we're always looking for new ways to get that information out to residents, into businesses. Building on to what Adam had mentioned, reaching out to those people that we don't already, who aren't actively coming to us, working on the business side, going through the chambers of commerce, getting the word out there to their members, and then hopefully then they can share. So we're trying to create these partnerships with these organizations, with the property management associations, office and building associations, to help, again, take our information and share it amongst their listservs and get the information to them as well. So we're really trying to find identifying those partnerships to work together and getting the message out there.
Regarding your recent, your organization, is that primarily earned, or is there a paid component to it, especially the social media piece?
Right. So far, it's all been earned, and we're
It's
getting
more challenging.
Yeah, it's more challenging, but it's surprisingly.
But stronger, right?
Surprisingly, we've had around the holidays, we had a big focus on recycling and regifting and finding goods that weren't.
That was great.
Oh, thanks. I just thought.
Yeah.
We're so effective as John. But we're starting to, and in 1 month we were on 3 networks, which was really unusual. So I think some of it's just paying off. But I still think we need to look into paid, mostly social, because we really want to do that micro-targeting into those groups.
It's hyper-local, it's and
Hyper-local.
if you can target it, it's not as costly as the old way of doing it was, and you can be really effective.
Yeah, but we want the feedback. So if there was a video that resonated, please this is great. If there's something that didn't quite, say, hey, this was a little fuzzy, and we want to really sort of fine tune. So if you want to be our sort of focus group test audience, we appreciate it. We're working on it, and we have 2 more positions to hire in that communications unit. So I'm really excited to try to make.
That's great.
Right, and we can come back and we can work with you more closely on what you think will work for people here in Silver Spring.
May I add something? I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm trying to be at 2 places at one time, but I don't know if anywhere else in the county. Of course, I'm gonna brag about Silver Spring. So anywhere else in the county, the time bank and the swapping events that these guys do, actually in this very room and that room, and the buy nothing type of economy and the implications of that to that movement. Are there other places in the county, or could this be? I mean, because this is totally talk about grassroots up.
Yeah.
This is totally grassroots up. I mean, and so is this happening elsewhere in the county, or is this something that maybe these guys can, I don't know, have a conversation with?
It is, but I don't know if it's as robust. This is especially robust, Eric, as you already know. But what I'd like to propose is, why don't we do a video highlighting this, this movement here, and then we can, multiply it out to the rest of the county, maybe help inspire other places to do it. It's a great example, it's a great story, and it just shows how people can take ownership. So if you're open to it, I'd love to.
One thing I can do is share with you the trailers that we've made from the Skillshare events.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, the
And that,
Skillshare
I think you'll find that interesting.
Please, would love that, absolutely.
And these are the type of things, frankly, I mean, you see it, and I must tell you, it's quite an honor to be exposed to these things. Not that I necessarily have plugged into the sharing part of it, but it's the kind of stuff that you see, if you see on NPR or wherever, you go like, that's really cool. It's happening in Washington State or whatever. That is happening right here. And they also, I'm totally convinced that this whole sharing economy, the real experts on this are probably the new Americans and the immigrant community. And I'm not sure that there is, and they do it informally, we know that. But is there a peer-to-peer learning here of what these guys are doing with the swapping events and the time bank and so it just always, every time I see, again, literally in this room, that kind of event happen, I go like, there's a there there. This is really nice. We're talking about how many people participate?
Time bank? The time bank?
Yeah.
Oh, it's over 300.
I mean, this is big. And to take it to scale in the county and to take it to the immigrant community, the American community with something they already do instinctively and say, look, there's a structure to this. And so it's recycling. It's recycling.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we recognize that, we're the government, so.
And we're here to
all
help.
good things, bad things that come with it, so we have the resources and we have enforcement, capability, but we only go so far. Really, we really need the partners. We're not going to convince your neighbors to the degree that you're going to convince your neighbors. So we really want that robust partnership. And if there's something that we can take and amplify and teach from and use our resources to do that, we'll absolutely do that. If it's, a boutique flyer about something that's going to, help make a difference, or some resource we can provide educationally, we'll do that too. We really need to empower you to be as effective as you can at the local level.
And as we've done in the past, the time back has been at Green Fest. So it's a little shameless plug, but Green Fest is coming up.
Oh, yeah.
It'll be here before you know it on Sunday, April 19th at Brookside Gardens. So there's another opportunity, again, to get the word out there. So as we invite people from all across the county to the Green Fest event, this great event, they can learn and see what's happening here in Silver Spring.
Yeah.
At Green Fest.
Do workshop or something. Love that.
Has everybody been to the Green Fest? It is such an amazing event. It is, especially seems to have found a home there at Brookside Gardens, and it's such a pleasant, really something for, sounds cliche to say, but for the whole family and friends, and it's like a very pleasant event that you're learning and you don't even know you're learning. So.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Donna, Michelle, any?
The only other thing I was curious about is you mentioned, we saw when we were there that it was older equipment, needed to be upgraded. You mentioned sort of some of the plans. What is the kind of more concrete plan to the short term for that funding? Is that secured? One of the things that we can do too is if there are things that you would want us to provide advice to the county executive, we can do that. But I'd be interested in hearing the specifics for the plans to upgrade the equipment in the facility.
Sure. So immediately we're trying to find a site. So do we want to expand there? And it's a pretty crowded area. It's been like 40 years, it's been like, oh, let's do this there, let's do that there. So there's not a lot of elbow room there. So we're looking at, should we grow there and move some things out, or should we find a new site? So that's where we are right now. And
There's plenty of room in the East County.
oh yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think we need like 13 acres someplace. And our real estate people have been out looking. Hasn't quite worked out yet, but that's still a work in progress. It's not completely ruled out to do something on site there, but we'd have to really reconfigure that area. We're also looking at, in the meantime, purchasing or leasing some of the robotics, because the robotics actually can be rolled up to the conveyor belt and you don't have to necessarily rebuild. It's just like adding another person, onto the line. So that's something that we're looking into to sort of test, see what works and see what different vendors provide different solutions. And then some of the other stuff required is going to fall from that. So if we want to provide some sort of trading area for furniture and stuff like that, that's going to require a lot of space. Yeah. So the decision on the recycling facility affects that decision as well. And then there's other stuff that we're looking at doing offsite. So, I mentioned that, one of the things we're looking at is a different ways for people to put stuff out in the curb. So if clothing is put out the curb in a bag at a certain color, then we know that, oh, that's a pink bag, that's a clothing bag, we can grab that, or that's an orange bag, that's an electronics bag. So other ways that we can collect that aren't heavy on the infrastructure. So all this is sort of in this time now where we're just sort of planning, evaluating, analyzing. So that's kind of what, not a very concrete answer, but we're sort of in the process of figuring it out.
How are we as a county dealing with like e-waste, like monitors and televisions and stuff like that?
Well, we have a drop off at the transfer station right when you come up to the public unloading. So we have a contractor who's picking up all the electronics, and they're pretty much if it's a good quality laptop that can be salvaged, we have some nonprofit partners who are taking it, cleaning off the things and reusing it. But all the stuff that is being recycled basically are taking it to a company where we're shredding the electronics, and then they're pulling out the various components of the plastics, the glass, the heavy metals, and then recycling the individual components of that type of material. So it's just being pretty much all mixed together at the recycler.
Because I know that like it used to be a thing to like send that stuff over to China, and they have not been wanting it so much anymore, and the cost for recycling that stuff has gone up a lot in recent years.
Yeah, for the electronics, our markets have always been in the U.S. for the domestic markets for the electronics. Yeah.
One thing that I liked is how keep on talking on the economic side of this, because the same way you say, you're talking to people who all agree, there are enough people in the county that don't automatically think this is worth spending money on. And you do a really good job, Adam, in talking about how this is real economics and how that can help. So keep on that.
Thank you. Thank you, I will. And I want to encourage everybody and all of you listening at home, please follow us on social media. If something resonates with you, please repost it, share it, give us feedback. So that's great feedback, Jonathan. Thank you, and I'll take that to heart.
Thank you